What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be giving you guys a bit of a market update as I decided not to go live tonight because I'm still trying to get over this sickness. But I didn't want to leave the Candle Mafia in the dark, so I wanted to drop this quick market update for you guys, give you some key levels as we do have Bitcoin hitting some local support. Are we going to be able to see a little bit of a bounce here? I want to talk about that in today's video. I want to show you guys some local levels I'm looking at. If we do get the bounce, where am I looking for that to bring us? And then we will also go over the higher time frames as Bitcoin does still look a little bit bearish on that 3-day, on that 4-day. We do have some new things popping up on the higher daily time frames that could be potentially pointing to some more downside. But I'm going to give you guys all the sauce in this quick little market update. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the charts and take a look at what we could be expecting next here on Bitcoin. Let's get into it. So guys, here we are on the Bitcoin chart, and as you guys know, Bitcoin has gotten a pretty harsh rejection here at around $66,350 as we were trying to make it back up into the middle of our macro range, rejecting that time point of control at 66,325 or 66,326, and we have gotten that drop all the way back down to this major level of support sitting at the value area low at about $60,280. And as we have been looking at this major downtrend here on the higher time frames, yes, this could be somewhat of a bull flag as we've been looking at for the past few weeks. It's very hard to tell if this is going to break to the upside or just continue the downtrend to lower prices. But one thing we did know was this was absolutely major resistance, and we did wind up getting that pullback. Now, as I mentioned yesterday on the live stream, I am not getting super overly bearish at this exact moment as we have come to a very key level of support being the value area low of that macro range. But I do want to bring up Market Cipher B here really quickly, because one thing we've been keeping our eye on, guys, is this 3-day red dot as well as that 2-day red dot, which is now confirmed. We also have money flow coming pretty harshly back to the downside here on these higher daily time frames. And you want to remember that the money flow indicates the longer term trend. And when you're talking about time frames like the 2-day, the 3-day, the higher daily time frames, this could potentially indicate that this macro downtrend may be able to continue. Now, like I said, I'm not getting overly bearish right at this moment, but these could be early warning signs to a potential bigger move to the downside. And we're going to be taking a look at those local levels in just a second. Now, if we shuffle over here to the 3-day, you guys can see that 2-day red dot confirming did wind up giving us the printing of that 3-day red dot, which is now popping up on the chart. And again, this 3-day money flow is something we've been looking at under a microscope here on the Frankie Candles YouTube channel, because we know as long as that money flow stays in the red, we can't necessarily anticipate more upside in the long term, because typically when you want more upside for Bitcoin, you want to see the opposite of what we have here, right? You want to see that money flow curving up into the green, and that is just simply not what we have here. I know this is not everybody's favorite thing to hear, but this is why we like to stick to the charts and the hard information to help us identify what is going to happen next on price action. So you guys can see here the 3-day money flow is starting to leak back out just a bit. So this is another kind of warning sign here that we may be able to continue down a little bit in the long term. Remember, this is the 3-day time frame. This will take time to play out. And even if we come on over to the 4-day, we are now printing that 4-day red dot. And although we saw that money flow starting to creep up here, as we were talking about on the live streams, we can't really take that to the bank just yet, because this may just wind up being another lower high in the overall trend of this money flow. And when it comes to money flow, guys, it's all about direction. You can't take these pops to the upside or pushes to the downside as instant signals. And you can see that that money flow is starting to curve back over towards the 0 line, potentially looking to cross over into the red. And to add insult to injury, we do also have that 4-day red dot printing in all of its glory here. Again, another somewhat bearish sign that we have to be keeping our eye on when it comes to those higher time frames. Now, obviously, if we push up here to the 5-day, seeing a very similar situation, if that move down does happen off that 4-day red dot, this 5-day is likely going to continue down, giving us a 5-day red dot. Now, luckily, if we pull up Market Cipher A, we are not seeing any blood diamonds or anything. This will be a little bit more alarming if we were getting a blood diamond on this 4-day red dot. But again, we do have to keep this into consideration, and it's definitely a point for the bears. And then coming up to the 6-day and the weekly, 6-day red dot also looking to print, and then that weekly VWAP is starting to come down, but a little bit too soon to take anything away from that. But these are definitely going to be a little bit more on the bearish end of things when it comes to those higher time frames. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I am not necessarily getting super bearish at this exact moment. And the reason for that is because very simply, we are again coming down to the value area low of this massive range that we've been in since March. And as we know, price action doesn't always just move in a straight line. Oftentimes, even if we are going to continue those downtrends, we can expect bounces to come in. We just have to use that higher time frame money flow being in the red as kind of our goggles that we're looking at price action through, understanding that if that money flow continues out, we're going to likely be looking for lackluster pushes up to potentially put in lower highs and then continue down to lower prices. So this is kind of what I'm looking at in the long term, guys, and I'm going to pull up the local levels in just a second. But if we are able to get a bounce here, and there could be reason for that as we go down to these lower time frames, I am definitely going to be very cautious for that lower high to come in and then potentially give us a bigger drop down. And I'm going to talk about those lower targets as well when we get to those local levels. Now, if we zoom into some of these lower time frames, I do want to point out here, guys, time frames like the 2 hour, you can see as we are approaching that key level of support, we are actually starting to put in lower lows on the price action with our higher lows on our momentum waves, giving us those bullish divergences, which sometimes can signal a little bit of a bounce to come in. So if we are able to see these bull dips, it's not just on the 2 hour, we also have these on the 1 hour, although this didn't really give us that strong of a bounce. And one of the biggest chances, I think, if we're going to get a bounce to come in here, one of the biggest chances we have is that 8 hour green dot, which you guys can see is printing right here. Not only do we have that green dot, but we also have that 30-minute money flow finally crossing over into the green. Now, this is not an instant signal for a massive pump. You can see you can get fake outs here, so you have to be careful about that. However, if we could see that green money flow continue up here as that 8 hour green dot confirms, sometimes with that money flow crossover on the 30-minute, you can see that start the bigger moves up. So that's kind of the scenario that we would need to play out if we're going to get that bigger correction to the upside. And if we do wind up getting that, the real question is, how high can price go? Now, for me, I'm going to be looking at the $64-ish thousand level. Let me go ahead and hide that macro range and pull up some more of these local levels. And you can see here, we are also coming down to the point of control of this other range that I'm looking at, which is pulled from the 2021 top. And you can see we deviated above that high, got accepted back into the range, and this is where we were looking for price to come down to that POC. Now we are sitting right at that exact level, and that is why you want to be subscribed to the channel, guys, so you can anticipate these moves before they happen, just like we do here on the channel. And again, I don't necessarily like looking for huge trades off the POC, but they can be an area where you get a little bit of a bounce. So again, just another reason why we may be able to get a little bit of a bounce here, although it could be lackluster. If we do wind up getting that bounce to come in, the 30-minute money flow gives us that big move up. These bull divs that we're seeing form down here do give us the bounce. I will be looking at some very specific levels to the upside, and that is going to be coming up here in this little mini value area that we formed as we got that push into the 64K level. You guys can see we kind of bing-bonged around here a little bit, creating some value. Now, if price does wind up pushing to the upside, I will be looking for a move into the $62,500 level where we have that previous value area low. And if we are able to flip this to support, I would then look for that move to continue up to the POC sitting at about 63,450. And then if we can get above that, I will be looking for a move into the $64,000 area. Now, this could be that big area to be looking for that lower high to come in my own personal opinion. This is where I will probably be looking for new short positions if we're able to get that move up there, because not only do we have a time point of control, and remember that big level that we rejected up here before the big drop down was a time point of control sitting right here at 66,326. So these do wind up sometimes giving you big moves. And we do have another one sitting here at about 63.9, giving us a range of resistance sitting between about 63.9 all the way up to about $64,500. And on top of that, we do have a golden pocket retracement here of this entire move to the downside. And oftentimes when we see those lower highs come in, it does come in between the golden pocket or even that 786 Fibonacci retracement before getting that lower high and a bigger drop to the downside. So locally, if we can get a bounce, this is kind of the trajectory I would be looking at. And not only that, but the doorways that we need to get past in order to see that push up to 64K. And then once we get up to $64,000, I'm personally going to start being very, very careful, taking profits on any long positions that I'm in, and then potentially looking for new shorts back down to the bottom of that local range and potentially beyond. Now, if we do put in that lower high, which again, guys, the reason I'm looking for that is not only do we have the higher time frames looking a bit bearish, at least in the medium term, we also do have some 4-hour signals here. Obviously, money flow is in the red. We've been looking at this for quite some time, but we now see the 6-hour as well as the 8-hour starting to cross over into the red with money flow. This could indicate that we are going to see a continued downtrend here within the context of these time frames. And if we are going to see that, a lower high could be possible. The highest likelihood area to put that lower high in could be that $64,000 to $64,500 zone. alone. Not only that, 10-hour money flow also creeping out. When you want to see a big move up on Bitcoin, you want to literally see the opposite of this, guys. When you're in the red, looking to cross over into the green. But I just inverted market cipher B. What we are really seeing is the opposite, is money flow coming out. And again, can we get faked out on this? Potentially. But to be quite honest, more often than not, money flow will wind up playing out in some form or fashion. So again, there is reason for me to look for these lower highs. I know everybody wants me to call for all-time highs right now, but I can't say that if the charts aren't saying it, right? I'm just the messenger, guys. I'm just the messenger, bringing you what the charts are saying. But that's what I'm going to be looking at here, guys. And again, kind of going against the herd and listening to the TA and the analysis we do here on the channel was able to help us not only look for the tops here back in June, but also the tops here back in July, and also this local top that we made back in August. So, everybody calls for all-time highs, but the charts are saying down. I am going to go with the charts every single time, even though eventually it's not going to play out. You have to put the statistics on your side, especially if you're going to be trading the ups and downs in this market, like we do here in the CandleMafia. But if we do wind up coming in, putting that lower high in, and continuing down, where are those lower targets that I'm looking at? Very simply put, let's go ahead and bring up those levels. I'm going to be pulling up this bigger range from the top of 2021. And very simply put, guys, if we do creep up there, not only do we have the golden pocket, not only do we have the time point of control, not only do we have the 786, but we also have the value area high of the range. And we know once you get inside this range, if you can't break out of that value area high, you're going to look for a rejection back down. And then if we can lose the POC, we could potentially be looking for a bigger move down to the value area low of this larger range, sitting at about $57,000, where we also have a bunch of liquidity sitting between about $57,300 all the way down to about $56,800. So there is liquidity to be grabbed down there. Now, it's not a guarantee that we're going to dump to 57K, but that is kind of what I'm going to be looking at, because again, those bull divs and money flow coming up on the 30-minute could call for that bounce back up, but I'm definitely going to be cautious here. Everybody is probably going to get super, super bullish as soon as price pumps, not understanding that there's a likely lower high to come in there. So just keep that in mind, and I'll be honest with you guys, if we do wind up seeing the bullish case play out, because again, that is definitely a possibility. Maybe the TA doesn't play out and we get the bigger move up. Again, probabilities would be against that actually playing out. But if it were, I would really, really like to see the break of that 65.2 level. And then, really in the long run, what we really need to get above to see higher prices on Bitcoin. Again, I want to reiterate, TA is not saying that. TA is saying lower, even if we bounce in the short term. But if we did get that bigger move, guys, we got to get above this trend line. And we also have to get above that macro POC at about $67,000. So we got to flip that $67,000 level to support and then get the bigger move up to the value area high at 70,000. And then we have a lot of liquidity above 70K, and we'll have to reassess the situation and figure out what is the most likely outcome there. And I don't know if that's going to play out, but if it does, I can promise you one thing. If we think it's going to continue up to 81 to 91 to $100,000, I will be the first person to tell you. And if we think it's going to reject that level to get a bigger dump, I will also be the first person to tell you that, to keep you ahead of the herd and on the right side of these trades, guys. So that is what I'm looking at here in the medium term, guys. Those are the key levels I'm watching. Now, I am still holding my long trade here from about $58,000. Obviously, have a bunch of locked-in profit there, as well as $417 unrealized. And I have taken a little bit more profit on my short as we came down to these key levels. Still up about 2K on that last dump to the downside with $1,400 locked in. So we're going to see what happens. I'm kind of well hedged here, whether we go up or down. And I will be looking for those fresh trades if we do wind up getting that move back to the upside. So that's what I'm looking at, guys. Now, before I let you go, I do want to take a quick look at Ethereum here, as Ethereum is starting to come back down to the bottom of this little volume profile that we have down here, this little range that we've made. And I kind of want to talk about this because there are some confluent levels down below. Now, the main range here, guys, is pulled from the bull market of 2021. Obviously, we were able to look for the bigger move up as soon as we flipped that value area low to support. We got back above that POC, got the big fill of the range up to the highs. We deviated back into the range, deviated once again, couldn't hold it, rejected, got stuck under that value area high, and then what happens? We get the bigger move down back to fill the range in full, down to the POC and the value area low. And the question is, are we going to get that move back up here? Now, if you look here, 4-hour money flow is in the red, 6-hour money flow starting to creep down here as well. This is not what you want to see for big moves to the upside, but this is a little bit longer term. If we pull up the local levels here on Ethereum, you guys can see we have this kind of local range that we've made, right? You come down, deviate below the low, flip the value area low to support, back to the POC, back to the high, and then most recently, we have deviated here. Let me move this over. We have deviated here above that value area high once again before coming back into the range and then starting to come down here to that value area low. Now, I do not love taking trades here at the POCs like this. I would much prefer prefer a bigger drop down to these key levels. We have a lot of confluence down here. We have 2 daily levels. We have the 786 of this entire move to the upside, because right now we're bouncing off that golden pocket. Can you get bounces off the golden pocket? Yes, but again, because that money flow is coming out, I will be looking for lower highs and hopefully a continuation down to that value area low for a much more sound long setup, especially with that 786 sitting there with the confluence of the dailies. Now, if we start losing this range, guys, I will say we could be looking down to some lower prices. And again, it's an if this then that statement. I wouldn't call for this just yet. Now, if we do come back down here and we cannot get back above that range low for a move back up to the high, I will be looking down where we have more confluence. We have a naked point of control, a monthly naked point of control sitting at about $2,032. And this is also confluent with our spider line here. You can barely see it. It is so confluent in that same exact area. So if we do break down there, this would kind of be the next target. If we get rejected out of this range and again can't get back above that low, I will be looking for a drop down to these prices. Now again, I'm going to be looking for longs down here, but if we don't get the confirmations and we lose it, this is just simply going to be the next target to the downside. I gave you the lower targets for Bitcoin, so I got to give you the lower targets for Ethereum as well. But that's all the time I got for today's market update. I'm going to go try to rest up, and hopefully I could be back in full force tomorrow for our live stream at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So mark out those key levels on your chart. Look for that potential short-term bounce on Bitcoin, but if we get the bigger move down, which again, I am leaning a little bit more bearish in the medium term here, even if we do get that bounce, you guys have all those key levels to be looking at for us to hopefully get saved by some support. So with all that being said, guys, that's all the time I got for today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Frankie Candles out.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah, you know. Maxed out, put the pedal to the floor, ayy, on the road, here we go, yeah, we winning by a landslide.